This is episode number 83 of Heavy or Not, and it's the third part of a sports reform mini-series focused on college football because it's such a big impact sport and such a drain economically.
You know, if you follow college football, you've probably felt it, that nagging sense that the sport has just kind of lost its way. I mean, with all the chaotic conference shuffling, the transfer portal madness, and these insane budgets, a lot of us are asking, is the game we love even broken? Well, today, we're going to dive into a really comprehensive proposal that says, yes, it can be fixed, but not with little tweaks, with a complete structural reset. So, what's the root of the problem? Well, according to this blueprint, the issues we see today, hollow championships, fans feeling totally disconnected, these aren't just random accidents. Nope. They're the direct result of deliberate choices that have completely ignored geography, twisted what competitive balance means, and basically treated tradition like it's optional. In other words, the system itself is the problem. And that really brings us to the big question, right? The one that's on pretty much everyone's mind. Is the fundamental structure of college football, a sport that means so much to so many, is it actually broken? This proposal argues pretty forcefully that, yes, it is. But, and this is the really important part, it also lays out a path forward. All right, so before we can even get to the fix, we've got to understand exactly what's broken. Let's start by really diagnosing the core problems that this whole proposal is designed to solve. This framework points to a few huge flaws. First, there's a massive resource gap, where the rich just keep getting richer and the gap is widening. Second, and this is a big one, competition is being decided in boardrooms, not on the actual field. You got just a few powerhouses that dominate everything, while other schools are stuck in this crazy spending race just trying to keep up. The main takeaway here, the structure itself seems to be predetermining the winners and the losers before a ball is even snapped. And this gets to a really critical point in the whole argument. The idea is that competitive outcomes are now shaped more by a team's conference than by its actual performance. I mean, think about it for a second. Your affiliation dictates your schedule, your media exposure, your entire path to the postseason. For the teams inside that power structure, a loss can be absorbed. But for those on the outside, a single loss can be a death sentence. Like the caption says, that isn't competition, that's pre-selection. So the crucial point is this. What happens when how well you run your program doesn't matter as much as it should? Right now, even with strong leadership, great coaching, and smart planning, you can't always overcome these structural barriers. The system as it is today can literally trap well-run, competent programs behind these huge financial and political walls, denying them a fair shot no matter how well they actually perform. Okay, so we've seen the problems. But this proposal doesn't just complain, it actually builds something new. So let's get into the solution, a pretty radical new foundation for the sport, one that's designed to bring back fairness and meaning. So the core idea here is a complete and total reset. It's creating a single top-flight competitive tier of 80 teams. And the goal is simple, get the best programs competing against each other all the time. This ensures meaningful games, it restores the very essence of college football, and it brings back that deep-seated regional pride that we all love. So you might be asking, how in the world would you organize these 80 teams? Well, the answer in this proposal is actually really simple and powerful. It's built on two principles that have been at the heart of college football for over a century: geography and rivalry. First things first, bringing back the traditions that make this sport so special. We're talking about those historic regional matchups that create culture, build community, and generate that intense fan engagement you see like here. The argument is pretty clear. When you ignore geography, the sport really loses its soul. And here is exactly what that looks like in practice. You've got the top 80 teams, and they're organized into 8 regional pods of 10 teams each. You can see how this would immediately cut down on travel, bring rivals way closer together, and create a really clear, logical structure for the whole regular season. And you can just instantly see how powerful this would be, right? I mean, imagine the huddle pod where Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and others are just battling it out every single year. Or the tackle pod down in the Southeast. What a gauntlet. Teams like Georgia, Alabama, and Florida State. These pods create high-stakes, local matchups week in and week out. It's fantastic. But hey, this system isn't just about restoring old rivalries. Its other foundational pillar is pure unadulterated, performance-based accountability. It's all about making sure that success is earned on the field, not decided by some backroom deals. And here is the mechanism for that accountability. This number, 5, this represents the number of teams that get relegated from the top 80 tier every single year based on their performance. Yeah, think of it just like promotion and relegation in European soccer. If you finish at the bottom, you're out. You get sent down to a lower tier. This makes sure there's constant movement and that no team, no matter how famous, can ever afford to get complacent. And this slide just makes the distinction crystal clear. The top 80 is designed to be a competitive tier based purely on merit. It is not a popularity contest or some permanent country club for historical powers. A team's place has to be earned and re-earned every single season right there on the field. And this really gets to the heart of why this kind of reform matters so much. The proposal argues that when the structure ignores tradition and fairness, fans don't just watch their team lose a game. They lose the feeling that the games themselves even have any meaning. So by restoring those regional rivalries and that competitive integrity, you give that meaning back to everyone. So this bold vision from 4rs.org is so much more than just a new schedule. It's a fundamental reimagining of what college football could be, a system built on performance, on tradition, and on fairness. And it leaves all of us with a really big question to think about. In this era of constant, chaotic change, is a radical reset like this exactly what's needed to save the sport we love?
This is Coach Mark Rodriguez. I want you to stay for the second half, but first a commercial break. And by the way, I want you to like, subscribe, and react with your comments and forward to friends. Future reform efforts about aquatics are going to need lots of awareness.
So if you've been watching college football lately, especially at the highest level, you can just feel it.
Right, yeah.
You're watching a sport that's it's structurally stressed. It feels less like an actual competition.
And more like a fixed rotation of the same winner.
Exactly. Subsidized by this massive cast of also-rans. The imbalance is just so intense. Teams are flying all over the country for conference games. And honestly, a lot of the local rivalries that made it fun are just gone.
And it's more than just a feeling of chaos. We're doing a deep dive today into this really radical two-part reform blueprint.
Right.
It's a set of documents called a structural reset for college football. And these aren't just complaints. They're incredibly detailed proposals.
We need to understand how to fix what feels broken in the game. The sources, they get right to it. They acknowledge that football, with its massive resources and fan loyalty, is just core to the health of our schools, both institutionally and economically.
And that's exactly why their central premise hits so hard. They don't mince words. They basically say that the current mess, the crazy spending, the imbalance, the hollow championships, none of it is an accident.
They use the word engineered.
They argue this was engineered by leadership that chose short-term profit over the actual integrity of the sport. So if we want to fix it, we have to look at the foundations.
And the sources they're brutal in their assessment. They hit you right away with this core failure. The rich get richer while the poor don't show up.
Yeah.
What really stands out to me is how they break down that widening resource gap.
What's fascinating is that the gap isn't just about money. It's about how that money creates this perpetual cycle of dominance.
The feedback loop.
Exactly. The wealthier programs use those resources to get all the top talent, invest in these massive facilities and huge staffs. Meanwhile, the other programs, they just can't keep up, which basically ensures the top stays the same.
But hold on, isn't the rich get richer just competition? What makes this crisis fundamentally structural?
It comes down to a concept they call pre-selection.
Pre-selection.
Yeah. They argue that the final outcomes are shaped less by what happens on the field and more by these structural advantages off the field.
Yeah.
You know, who you're aligned with in a conference, how your schedule is set up, and maybe most importantly, who gets access to the postseason.
So the argument is that the game is basically rigged before the season even starts because of those advantages.
Precisely. If you're inside that dominant power structure, you could lose a game or two and it doesn't really matter. But if you're on the outside, you have to be perfect or close to it just to even be considered. It completely flips the whole idea of competition on its head. It means the championships are really being decided in boardrooms, not by the athletes on the field.
Which leads right into this idea they highlight of an investment flywheel.
Yeah.
This is where universities get locked into this non-strategic spending. They're constantly forced to build bigger facilities, pay bigger salaries.
Just to keep up appearances. It's, frankly, an absurdity. Universities are trapped in this spending arms race, this flywheel. But the competitive outcomes don't change.
So the costs just get passed on.
They get passed on to students, to the institutions, and to the fans who are paying more for, honestly, a worse experience.
And that puts the burden right back on the academic mission of the schools. So it's not just a sports problem. The documents are clear that even the best leadership, the best coaching, can't overcome these barriers.
That is the core thesis. Management matters, but structure decides. You could hire the greatest coach in the world, but if your conference is bloated and the postseason is gatekept by these political and financial walls, you're never going to get a fair shot. The whole system should reward performance, not just, old affiliations.
And we can't forget the damage to the fan culture. The last big problem they point to is this loss of tradition and geography. We've all watched it happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Long-standing rivalries just thrown away, treated as expendable.
And when the structure ignores geography, fans lose that deep inherited meaning. But there's a real physical cost, too. We're talking about flying teams across 3 time zones for one conference game.
It's insane.
It directly impacts player health, their academics, and the budget, all to maintain this illusion of a national super league.
So if bad geography, fixed outcomes, and this crazy spending are the problem, the fix has to start with geography and merit. Let's get into the solution.
It's radical, but it's also really simple. Establish a clear, accountable top-flight tier.
Okay, a dedicated elite league. How many teams are we talking about here?
A very specific number. 80 college football programs. And the sources make a huge point of clarifying this. It's not based on popularity or who has the most alumni donations.
Or who is a powerhouse in the 80s.
Exactly. Entry into this top-flight tier is based purely on sustained performance and institutional readiness.
That's a fascinating distinction. They're basically saying, yes, you need the resources, but those resources don't guarantee you a spot. So investment is treated as a gate, not a guarantee.
That's the perfect way to put it. You have to be able to commit, but you have to keep earning your right to be there through performance. It clarifies for everyone, these 80 programs are the ones playing for the championship. Everyone else is competing at a more sustainable regional level.
So how do they fix the travel and rivalry mess that we see in the current conferences?
That's the elegant part. To solve all those issues, travel, cost, rivalries, those 80 programs get broken down into 8 regional pods.
8 pods.
Each with 10 teams. And the main rule is geography first. That immediately slashes travel, it enhances all those regional stories, and it guarantees the return of the historic rivalries that fans actually care about.
I think this is the most compelling detail in the whole plan.
Yeah.
The idea that you could, drive to most of your conference games again. Tell us about these regional narratives.
The pods are hyper-clustered geographically, and they have these great names. For example, you have the Block Pod in the Plains and Texas region. That puts teams like Texas Tech and Oklahoma State back together.
Instantly restoring those turf battles.
Right. And then in the Midwest, you have the Huddle Pod, which locks in Michigan and Ohio State with their natural Great Lakes rivals.
What about the West Coast? Their identity has been completely fractured lately.
They try to repair that with what they call the Grandstand Pod. This aligns key rivals like Cal, USC, and Oregon, so they're playing their regional counterparts every single year. The goal is stability and tradition.
So you're creating 8 little mini leagues. But what about the national picture? Does this make college football too small?
They argue it actually restores national interest through the playoffs, which would happen after the pod championships. But the 10-team pod structure creates a 9-game schedule inside your own pod. That leaves one open date for teams to schedule someone outside their pod. So that's where you can get those national matchups. But they become strategic choices, not required budget-breaking trips.
That is smart. It gives teams an outlet for their national profile without wrecking the regional stability. Okay, speaking of national profiles, what about the famous independents? I mean, Notre Dame's whole brand is built on being an outlier. How do they handle an exception like that?
They actually carve out a specific space for them. Notre Dame's unique status, their revenue strategy, all that is preserved. But, and it's a big but, there's a hard boundary. They would not be eligible for the top-flight tier playoffs unless they chose to fully join a geographic pod, like the Huddle Pod.
So their independence remains, but their shot at a championship is tied to being part of the accountable structure.
That's it, exactly. They could still play a tough schedule, using that open date slot to play pod teams or other independents, like, say, the annual Army-Navy game.
Which brings up the service academies. Are they in the top 80?
It's interesting. Army and Navy are specifically placed outside the top 80
Why?
because their traditional schedule, especially that December game, just conflicts with the proposed playoff structure. So they would play an independent schedule at the next level down. But Air Force is considered top 80 ready. They're placed in the Blitz pod with other plains and mountain teams.
Okay, now let's talk about the programs left outside that top 80. The sources aren't just saying they're not good enough. They actually identify specific competitive ceilings.
Right. The argument is that these programs really struggle against elite teams because of these deep infrastructure and roster limitations. They actually categorize the reasons. One is just inconsistent on-field success.
So teams that can't ever seem to sustain excellence.
Yeah, they're always rebuilding. Another one is limited long-term investment, in things like facilities.
And I've got to imagine the rise of NIL has only made that gap wider.
Oh, absolutely. The documents point directly to what they call facilities, NIL, or depth gaps. When you play a top 80 team, your structural disadvantages just mean you can't sustain a championship run. It's not a punishment. It's just an honest assessment that they're operating at a different level.
But the whole point of a dynamic system is that those disadvantages aren't permanent. They can earn their way in, right?
That is the hinge of the entire reform. The current structure has permanent, fixed membership. This plan introduces the crucial element for accountability, the promotion and relegation mechanism.
Okay, this is the big one. This is the shakeup for American sports. How do they keep it impartial? How do you keep committees and politics out of it?
It's designed to be purely mathematical. It's based entirely on your on-field performance within your pod. The goal is annual accountability. You have to perform constantly to keep your status.
No complacency.
None. And the core rule is simple and non-negotiable. 5 up and 5 down every year.
5 teams relegated from the top 80 and 5 promoted from a sub-tier. Wow. That means more than 6% of the elite league is on the chopping block every single season. The stakes for every game just went through the roof.
It creates instant pressure and excitement. If you're a traditional powerhouse and you're struggling in November, suddenly that final game isn't just for pride.
It's for survival. It's to stay in the top 80 and keep your revenue stream.
Exactly.
So let's look at that sub-tier, because that's where the hope and the competitive spirit really live for those other programs.
The sources outline a massive sub-tier, about 40-plus teams. Just like the top tier, these programs are grouped into 4 regional sub-tier pods: Northeast, Southeast, Central, and Western.
And they use the same geographic logic for the sub-tier.
Identical. Same rules, 10-team pods, same geographic focus. It preserves their rivalries, it minimizes their travel, and it creates a level playing field for them. But the real prize is getting promoted.
Okay, let's do the math on promotion. We need 5 teams to move up. How do they pick them?
So you get 4 automatic promotions. The champion of each of the 4 regional sub-tier pods, they automatically move up to the top 80.
Simple meritocracy. I like it.
Clean and simple.
That covers 4 of the 5 spots. What about that last wild card position?
That's what they call the promotion bonus spot. This 5th team is the winner of a single elimination tournament that's played between the 4 teams that finished in 3rd place in their respective subpods.
Wow, that is brilliant. Let me just break that down for you listening.
It's called the sub-tier promotion and championship structure.
Quite a mouthful.
Our mission really is to map out the 5 unique, and I mean demanding, pathways that teams have to navigate just to claw their way up to that elite tier. So the whole system, this sub-tier, it's broken down into 4 distinct regions.
So think of them as 4 separate regional leagues all running at the same time.
And the baseline is the same for everyone. Every single team, no matter which pod they're in, plays this really intense 9-game regular season.
Just 9 games?
Just 9 games. And that performance is the ultimate filter. I mean, it dictates everything that follows.
From getting a direct shot at promotion to maybe getting a second chance.
A second chance in a very, very high-stakes tournament, yeah.
All right, let's start with the most direct path then. The direct ascent. This is for the teams that just killed it in the regular season.
Right. The structure is set up to immediately reward the absolute best performers. So specifically, the teams that finish first and second in those 9 games.
In their own pod.
In their own pod, yes. They automatically advance to the postseason. They've earned their shot, and their entire season now boils down to one single day of reckoning.
Okay, so top 2 finish in each of the 4 pods. That gets you into this crucial match. But just so everyone's clear, this isn't some kind of series. Right?
No, not at all. No best of 3, no semifinals.
It's one and done.
That's precisely what makes the pod championship game such a brutal test. It is a one-off, single-elimination final. It happens right after the regular season ends, and it is the definition of sudden death pressure.
Wow. So you've got 2 teams who've proven they're the best in their region over 9 games, but only one gets to cash in. So what happens to the winner?
The winner of that single game is crowned the pod champion, which, is prestigious.
That's fair bragging rights.
Bragging rights, exactly. But the real prize is immediate, guaranteed promotion to the elite tier for the next season. It's the ultimate payoff for finishing top 2 and then executing when it matters most.
So the math here is pretty simple then. We have 4 pods.
Northeast, Southeast, Central, and West.
So 4 pods, that means 4 championship games, which means 4 champions. And that's our first 4 promotions. 4 tickets punched.
Correct.
Right.
But if you really analyze the psychology here, you have to think about the runner-up. The team that finished second, maybe even tied for first in the standings, fought all the way to that final, and then lost. Their season is just over. They're stuck in the sub-tier for another year because of one bad game.
It just highlights how fragile excellence is in the system. 9 games of brilliance can be completely erased. That brings us to the crucial 5th spot. If we only have 4 pod champions, where does that last promotion come from?
And this is where the system gets really clever. It shifts from just rewarding outright excellence to rewarding consistency and resilience.
How so?
Well, it sort of acknowledges that maybe the second best or even the third best team in a really strong pod might actually be better than the champion of a weaker one.
Right. Okay. So this is where it gets really interesting. The structure throws a lifeline, but not to the runner-up who just lost that devastating final game.
No, their season is done. They're out.
The lifeline goes to the team that finished 3rd. The team that was consistent, but maybe not quite dominant enough to make that pod final.
Exactly. The focus shifts entirely to the third-place finishers. These 4 teams, so the bronze medalists from the Northeast, Southeast, Central, and West, they get automatic entry into a whole separate postseason tournament.
And this tournament is designed specifically for that 5th and final promotion slot.
That's its only purpose.
So these 4 teams, they've just missed the direct path, and now they get a second chance. But it's a totally different beast. It's not regional anymore.
That's the key difference. It becomes interregional. They've just played 9 games against their geographic rivals, and now suddenly they're thrown into a national level competition.
And it's not based on rank like the pod championship. The sources say this thing is, well, it introduces pure chaos.
It's a mini 3-game, 4-team bracket tournament. And that chaos, literal draw from a hat. It's fascinating. Your opponent isn't seeded. You're not paired against a team with the worst record.
Yeah.
It's just random luck.
What does that do to a team? I mean, psychologically, but also just logistically?
Psychologically, it's immense stress. You can't scout your opponent. You can't prepare until that draw is final. But logistically, the consequences are enormous.
Like what?
Well, imagine the third-place team from the Central Pod draws the team from the West. They're suddenly facing a massive travel burden, a cross-country trip on incredibly short notice.
Right, because this whole tournament is over in, what, 2 weeks?
2 weeks. So you have to recover, manage the travel, prepare for a team you might know nothing about, all in the space of a few days.
Yeah.
The structure demands this rapid, high-stakes adaptability.
So walk us through that timeline. It sounds intense.
It is. Week 1 is the semifinals. 2 games played right after the draw at a neutral pre-selected site. The pressure is immediate. You lose, your season is over. Just like that.
And the 2 winners advance.
The 2 winners advance. And the very next week, week 2, those 2 surviving teams meet in the finals.
So in about 10 days, a team has to win 2 sudden death games against opponents from completely different parts of the country. That's a gauntlet.
It's an absolute gauntlet. And the victor of that final game, they secure the coveted 5th and final promotion spot. It turns what would have been a respectable third-place finish into this war of attrition.
They don't just win a promotion, they survive a mini-tournament.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's put these 2 paths side by side for a second. We have the direct win path, where the top 2 teams in a pod play 1 game for one of 4 spots.
Right.
And then we have the second chance path, where the 4 third-place teams have to endure this 2-week, 3-game bracket against unfamiliar opponents for 1 single spot.
For the teams that finished first or second, it's all about that one championship game. For the team that comes out of the third-place tournament, they had to win high-pressure games in 14 days.
With travel, with all of it. I mean, it raises a question about fairness, doesn't it? Is it really balanced that the fifth promoted team has to prove its worth while the first four only had to win once after the season?
The system is really designed to reward that regular season performance exponentially.
So finishing top two gives you the easier road.
It gives you the path of least resistance. You earn that minimal time commitment by being one of the top two. The three-game tournament is the system's way of saying, okay, you are good enough to be third, so you deserve an opportunity. But that opportunity is going to come with maximum difficulty.
So the incentive is to fight like crazy to avoid third place.
Absolutely. The number one goal is still to finish first or second, because that single-game bottleneck is just statistically and physically easier to get through. But the genius of it,
Go on.
the genius is that the third-place path means that even teams in fourth place still have something to play for late in the season. If third place is within reach, they're fighting for a shot at that tournament. No one gets mathematically eliminated early.
Okay, what about a strategic calculation? Could a team ever find themselves thinking, we can't beat the first place team in our pod, they're a juggernaut. Maybe we should aim for third and take our chances in the random draw.
That's a fascinating thought experiment, but I think it's highly unlikely in practice. Two big reasons. First, trying to land in third place on purpose is just too risky. You could slip to fourth and get nothing. And second, that one-game final, as high pressure as it is still just one game. Winning 3 games in 2 weeks is arguably a much harder competitive feat.
The reward for finishing top two is that low time commitment.
Exactly. You maximize your chance by minimizing the number of wins you need.
So the system really does work on multiple levels. It rewards excellence with the shortest path, and it rewards consistency with the hardest path.
It forces teams to completely change their competitive mentality depending on which path they end up on. The pod champions come out of an intense local rivalry. The fifth team emerges from a war of attrition against total strangers.
It's just a really smart piece of competitive architecture. It's built to maximize intensity right to the final whistle.
And that means those final 2 weeks in the sub-tier season are just pure drama. You have the 4 single-elimination pod championship games running at the same time as the chaotic, multi-regional third-place tournament.
So every team that's still in it has a championship event to focus on, whether it's regional or national.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's just nail down the summary. It's a 2-part system. 4 promotions come from the 4 pod championship games. That's for the top 2 regular season teams. And one final hard-won promotion is secured through that wild third-place tournament, giving us 5 total paths for 5 teams to get to the elite tier next season.
It ensures that the promoted teams aren't just good at winning. They're good at surviving very specific kinds of pressure.
How much of a psychological advantage does that 5th team, the one that survived the sudden death pressure of the third-place tournament, bring with them to the elite tier?
That's a great question.
I mean, they didn't just win a championship game. They won games on short rest against unknown cross-regional opponents. They proved their logistical, strategic, and mental toughness under conditions that were far more chaotic than what the other champions faced. Does surviving that gauntlet, does it inoculate them against future pressure? So nearly every single game in that sub-tier has massive stakes. You're either fighting for automatic promotion or to get into that bonus tournament or just to avoid the drop. The result is real hope for every program.
And if you connect all of this back to the big picture, the whole proposal is designed to restore integrity. It ensures natural competition, it aligns regions, and it ties accountability directly to what happens on the field, not what a committee thinks about brand names.
It's a truly radical shift, moving college football away from these fixed outcomes and political barriers toward a dynamic system that's driven purely by performance and regional identity.
It really creates a fascinating thought experiment for anyone who follows the sport.
It does. Since this plan is all about merit and accountability over prestige, think about this as you go through your week. Which historical powerhouse team won that currently benefits from all the structural advantages but maybe has had some dips in performance? Which one do you think would be most likely to face relegation in the first couple of seasons under a system like this? Something to chew on.
We'd like you to like, subscribe, react with your comments, and forward to your athletic directors, coaches, and friends in the media. Send it to your team list. All of the slides and background materials are available for you to take from the public domain and merge into your own article or rebuttals. see us over at 4rs.org or the Substack.